Hello everyone and welcome! Do you want to know if a servant is good enough to spend your hard-earned quartz on? Great, then you are in the right place. Let me give you the information necessary for that decision. Welcome to the FGO Gacha Guide. Today's topic servant is the truly perfect and beautiful genius, Writer Leonardo da Vinci-chan, aka La Vinci. We will be covering the points that you see on screen, but first a fun fact with Da Vinci-chan. Writer Da Vinci-chan was originally in FGO Arcade, but as a 4-star. Seeing as she is a 5-star in the mobile game, this is definitive proof that mobile is greater than arcade. Take that, arcade nerds! We are superior. Everyone feel good about yourselves. Now on to my personal opinion. In my personal opinion, Da Vinci-chan is amazing! She is the best AoE writer in the game. She has good skills, great synergy with her supports, and one of the best MPs out there that you could ask for. She is truly an example of how to do a support that is DPS focused with semi-support abilities well. Writer Da Vinci-chan is just an example of a very well-made servant. Now let's see why with her stats. Writer Da Vinci-chan is a 5-star Rider class servant, as you might have guessed, meaning she is super effective against casters and weak against assassins. Her attack at 90 is 10,833. This is on the lower end for a 5-star servant, while her HP is 14,112, which is about average for a 5-star servant. Checking her hidden stats, we see that her MP gain per hit is 0.49%, pretty average. As for her cards, her quick card does 4 hits, her arts cards do 4 hits, her buster cards do 2 hits, and her extra cards do 4 hits. These hit counts are below average overall. Her star weight, aka how easy it is to get critical stars on her cards over other servants' cards, is 205. This is incredibly high. It is very easy to get critical stars onto her cards. Her star generation, aka how easy it is to make stars with her cards, is only 9%, which is a little below average. Overall, her stats do come out to be below average. Her stats, however, are not the good thing about her. Her saving graces come from her skills and her MP, so let's take a look at her deck and NP setup. Da Vinci-chan has 2 arts cards, 1 quick card, and 2 buster cards, a very standard 2-1-2 deck. Her Noble Phantasm, Beautiful Journey, the one who is beyond the border, is an AoE Arts Noble Phantasm with 3 hits that will deal damage to all enemies, charge the party's MP gauge by 20%, and increase her Arts performance for 1 turn before dealing damage by 20 to 40%. This MP is simple, but very good. The 20% charge would be good just on herself, but it charges the entire party. So by charging her MP, you are also charging the other unit's NP. A very good support style skill added to a damage dealing NP. On top of that, the arts increase with her overcharge helps with the damage, her follow-up cards, and her MP gain on hit, which are all very good bonuses for her. And she even has a skill to help reach those overcharge levels even easier. Altogether, a very good NP for what you want to do with Writer Da Vinci. Let's take a check at her passives. First off, we have Riding B, increasing her quick performance by 8%. Territory Creation C, increasing her arts performance by 6%. And finally, Overhaul E, which gives her an increased debuff resistance by 20%. And increased critical star generation rate by 20%. Honestly, these are not particularly great passives. Territory Creation is the most helpful one to her, but Riding only affects 1 card. Overhaul is not going to do a whole lot. She doesn't make critical stars very well, especially with only 1 quick card, and debuff resistance is honestly not that useful most of the time, unless it's a 100% resistance. Moving on to her skills, first off we have Golden Rule, Body. This will grant Da Vinci-chan debuff immunity for 3 turns, recover her HP every turn for 3 turns by 500 to 1000 in HP regen skill for 3 turns, and give her an NP regen skill for 3 turns that gives her 10 to 20% NP per turn. This is a very good skill, really good skill. It gives La Vinci 3 turns of not having to worry about any sort of negative effects, which is a nice boon. The HP regen is helpful. It can be for some of the more difficult fights if you want to take her into a challenge quest. And the The MP regen of 20% per turn, coming out to 60% total, is extra helpful because sometimes that 20% is all you need to be able to continue looping from one turn to another with her MP. Next up, we have her second skill, Accel Turn. This very simply gives her evasion for one attack and increases her critical damage for one turn by 30 to 50%. So this is honestly not a very good skill. The best part about it is it has a very low cooldown at only 4 turns, and the fact that the evasion sticks until it is knocked off with a hit, so theoretically you can get 2 evasion turns back to back. Either way, this is still a pretty weak skill. Again, star production is not something that da-vinci does very well, so critical damage increases aren't something she's looking for. It's only a 1-turn buff. It's honestly her weakest skill. Moving on to her third skill, we have Dream Upon the Stars. This increases the party's MP damage by 20 to 30% for 3 turns, charges the party's MP gauge by 10%, and overcharges the party's MP by 1 stage for 1 turn. This is another very good skill. A party-wide MP charge is always nice, even at only 10%. That does make it a total 30%. The MP damage up helps with clearing stuff and is very nice for Rider da-vinci. And finally, the overcharge on MP synergizes well with supports, especially Caster Artoria when she comes out and defines the meta. This is the skill that allows da-vinci to deal extra damage with her MP due to her arts cards getting a little bit of an overcharge on it. It allows you to let Caster Artoria get multiple hits of invulnerability with her MP. It allows you to get a higher star regeneration if you want to bring Merlin, all that good stuff. Anytime that you can think of a support with a decent overcharge, they pair pretty well with Rider da-vinci just because of how good this skill is. On top of that, it is on a low cooldown, only 5 turns, with a 3-turn uptime on the damage up, which means that most of the time you have a damage up for those longer fights. Looking at all her skills and MP, you can see that da-vinci-chan is all about NP spamming, and she's quite good at it. While her MP only has 3 hits, her first skill helps bridge the gap in NP gain needed to loop. On top of that, she is constantly charging her allies up, so if you bring someone like Tamamo, for example, you get even more NP charge via Tamamo's NP usage. If you like spamming servants' MPs, da-vinci is one of the best servants in the game to have, probably the best servant in the game to have if you like to use MPs a lot. So what materials do we need to level these skills? Luckily, da-vinci-chan isn't all that expensive. Each skill will cost you 15 horseshoes, 15 homunculus babies, 15 reactor cores altogether, and 10 Genesis eggs. Which means to max her out it is 45 horseshoes, 45 babies, 45 reactor cores, and 30 eggs. Overall, somewhat cheap. Not too bad at all. The eggs are very new as they just released with Lost Belt 4, so it might be the one material that's pretty low in supply for most. The reactor cores are from Lost Belt 3, which means those might be a little bit low in supply as well. Getting at least up to rank 7 or 8 is pretty easy. Fully fleshing her out is the hard part. But overall, not too bad, not too expensive, all things considered, especially when you want to compare her to Mama Nobu, who was our last 5-star, who was way more expensive. Now, if you roll for, oh, I'm sorry. Before we do that, how does da-vinci-chan stack up against her competition if you roll for her? We've got, as a 5-star AoE rider, her main competition being Francis Drake, Iskander, Ivan the Terrible, Achilles, and I will make special mention of 4-star Summer Mordred, because Rider da-vinci is comparing, or competing directly with Summer Mordred in the exact same job. When it comes to damage output or star generation, da-vinci-chan is going to lose out to the likes of Drake, or Iskander, Ivan the Terrible, and Achilles. Those guys and gal hit relatively hard, can generally produce stars a little bit better than da-vinci-chan, and are able to do 1 turn of better damage. But When it comes to looping potential, when it comes to potential for challenge quests and the ability to stay on field for a long time, even against difficult foes, Ryder da-vinci is among the best of the best. Looping potential, she is #1 on the board. Summer Mordred is able to gain back a little bit more NP than Ryder da-vinci, but at a damage cost. Meanwhile, Ryder da-vinci does have 3 turns of 20% gain per turn to easily bridge the gap that may exist. Meaning Ryder da-vinci is able to overcome Summer Mordred, who has been the queen of arts looping for the longest time. Ryder da-vinci will be able to take that throne from her. Now, if you do roll for da-vinci-chan, then which skills should you prioritize in leveling? Starting off with skill 1 is a great idea. Gives you that MP regeneration per turn. 20% per turn is quite a bit. The HP regeneration is nice as well. At least it can be, depending on what kind of quest you are bringing her on. Next, I would go for her 3rd skill. It scales pretty nicely for the MP damage. It is 3 turns of it, which is very nice. And getting the lower cooldown so that it has more uptime for those longer fights, again, is a very good idea. And finally, her 2nd skill, because the only thing it's scaling is the critical damage and the cooldown. And critical damage is not something you're going to be super capable of getting with da-vinci-chan, unless you're a little bit lucky. And the cooldown, most of what it's going to do is give you that extra evasion, which lets you survive a little bit better. So not the biggest priority. Let's look at craft essences to equip her with. As da-vinci-chan is an AoE arts servant who specializes in NP looping, we will help her achieve this with our 2 best free-to-play CEs for this are Painting Summer and Dive to Blue. They are both very similar CEs. Painting Summer on the left will give you 10% arts performance up, 10% MP generation up, and 50% starting MP gauge. While Dive to Blue will give you 10% arts performance up, 10% NP damage up, and 50% starting MP gauge. They're both extremely good for helping arts units loop multiple turns in a row. If you want slightly higher damage, Dive to Blue is your go-to. If you want slightly higher MP generation, then Painting Summer is your go-to. If you need more damage, the alternative I would suggest is Black Grail. Black Grail is something that I would honestly hold back on for a little bit, but it will give you 60 or 80% MP damage up if it's max limit broken, at the cost of just 500 health per turn. It's much more usable after Caster Artoria comes out, and da-vinci-chan can much more easily loop with it. As for Kaleidoscope and Imaginary Element, both of those are relatively good starting CEs even for her, because she is able to... If you bring a support that can give her just that first 20% on turn 1 for Kaleidoscope, or 25% for Imaginary Element, then Ryder da-vinci is generally able to make her way into the looping situation very easily from that point on. These are just if you need fast NPs, though. They'll always be here as suggested craft essences. Why wouldn't they be? As for servants to pair her with, oh look, it's Waver! What a surprise he's here! He has a 50% MP charge over his skills, defense up, attack up, crit up. He works with anyone, he'll always be on this list. Since da-vinci-chan is an arts servant though, her best current supporter is Tamamo no Mae, the fox girl herself. Tamamo brings 50% arts up for 3 turns, some healing, 30% NP damage up for 3 turns, and on her MP, she will give healing, NP charge, and cooldown reduction for those longer fights, and on top of that, every time Ryder da-vinci-chan does an NP, Tamamo gains more MP charge. You can have basically both of their MPs going off almost every single turn by having them in the same team with each other. It's kind of disgusting how efficient it is. It's beautiful in a way. And of course, next anniversary when she comes out, Caster Artoria will be the absolute best support for any arts servant. Castoria brings 50% MP charge across her skills, 20% attack up, 30% MP generation up for 3 turns, 50% arts up for 3 turns, invincibility on her NP, damage up on her MP. She brings everything to the table and makes every arts servant very happy to have. That being said, one of the stronger groups that you can go with is one Tamamo, one Cast Oratoria, and Rider da-vinci, because Cast Oratoria, the one thing she doesn't have is healing. With the Tamamo there, instead of a second Cast Oratoria, you can have infinite MPs, tons of heals, your skill cooldown's constantly low, and you can take on just about any kind of challenge quest you can think of that isn't one-shotting you. Truly a formidable team. Quick, too long didn't watch here. da-vinci-chan is amazing. She is a great servant to roll for. She is, in my opinion, the best AoE rider in the game. She can loop like crazy and even helps her supports get MPs off by looping. She has a lot of wiggle room for her CE since her looping is so good, so she's flexible. But if you do need a really good reason to roll for her, she's adorable and perfect. Look at her. How can you look at that face and not want to roll for it? So, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like, a comment, check my Twitch channel, all that stuff. Thanks for watching, guys. Good luck on your rolls, and I'll see you on the next Gacha Guide.